last thing today would be last week we covered the coating barrier, the first part. So we will be covering the second part. What we discussed last week was about the pigments, binders, all the stuff, and we just now this is a steel plate. So that is stated top side and the bottom side. Usually the first thing is there is zinc coating there. Then there is a preparation. Then the primer and of coat. So it's two coat paint system over galvanized. So this is one kind of painting picture. So we were talking about the loss factor. Now many people don't consider this loss factor, which is the most important thing in practical painting. Because if you happen to look at a data sheet, it's in your hand, you just open it. Now this is the Sigma cover 280. We just went through this. So there are so many information here. And when you come to the middle part, they will tell you the theoretical spreading rate is 11.4 square meter per liter at 50 microns DFT. As we said, 1 millimeter equals 1000 microns. So at 50 microns DFT, this paint is manufactured for 11.4 square meter per liter. So what we do is we take 11.4 and calculate we take the 2000 square meters and divide by 11.4. So we can do the job with 175 liters. So if you do calculation like that, you will be in deep trouble because this is the theoretical. So we discussed about loss factors. The paint can go into the brush, paint can go into the hose, paint can get spilled, and moreover, once you sandblast, you get a profile. That profile also some paint will get lost. So we have to, we looked at a chart the last time, and this is the chart. This is a chart. Now this chart is very clear. It says if you are air spraying a large plate, a new plate, inside a workshop, you take a 30% loss factor. If you have framework with air spray, exteriors, outside, you have 85% loss factor. These factors are calculated and they have done some research and given this paper. Also one can say this is done by a paint manufacturer. So they want to put a higher loss factor that more paint can be sold. That is also another reason. But we have to take it, now what is the Petroleum Corporation? If last time we did the tank painting, if you saw 2000 square meters covered by 220 liters, you just take it down in your diary. The next time you can use that. But don't forget, the next time there will be high wind. So then you need 260 liters, maybe. So the steam factor also is here. So what we say is, there should be a way to calculate the loss factor. Now this is the relationship between the loss factor and the percentage of more paint required. So there's an example of calculation. So we call the DSR, theoretical spreading rate, which you saw on the data sheet, is equals volume solid. Now in Sigma cover 280, the volume solid is 57% into 10 over the DFT. So we saw it in the paper, 50 microns is 11.4. So if you take a calculator, you multiply 57 into 10 divided by 50 microns, you get to 11.4. So hereafter you can calculate any paint theoretical thing with this formula. For instance, if you take a product which is 78% solid, so 78 over 10 into 10 over the DFT 300 microns, 2.6 square meter per liter. But this is the theoretical rate. So first we calculate the theoretical rate. Then now we have to consider the loss factor, because the estimated practical spreading rate equals PSR into a percentage of loss factor. Now depending on that chart, what we saw earlier, if it is 30% loss, so if we multiply by the 70%, 0.7, that's 1.82 square meter per liter. So you can calculate your own paint, the manufacturer can give you some idea, and also you can do your own calculation if you have the data sheet, because Sri Lanka Navy we work very closely. Now we are supposed to give a tender, we give these charts. So the Navy will double check that they also know this calculation, and if there's an error they will, it's bad on us. So generally, other than Sri Lanka Navy and Port Authority, other people don't do this calculation, at least try to use this calculation. So now we have a PSR, we know PSR, now we go for the PS. Practical spread. Or we call it PSR, practical spreading rate. Estimate the practical spreading rate. Okay. And then if PSR is 4 square meter per liter, the loss factor is 30%, then we know 2.8 square meter per liter will be the practical spreading rate. So maybe we can do a little, if you have a calculator or something, and you can, I'll give you a little exercise. Say the solid content is 60%, the DFT is 150 microns. Can anybody give me the PSR? Solid content is 60%, the DFT is 150. So 60 into 10 over 150 will be 4 square meter per liter. And if it is, if we say it's air spray and inside the building, large plates, you take as 40%. So into 0.6, you get 2.4 square meter per liter. So this is how the calculations are done in the paint industry. This is good for Sigma, International, Johto, Hempel, anything. Paint is paint. Solids are there in both the products. Solvents are there in the both products. So this is a common formula done by the chemistry, chemical engineering, and we industry people are using it very, very commonly. So first, if it is 1,000 square meters, 1,000 over 4 is 250 liters. So this is, if you look at this calculation, you see everything depends on solid volume solid. So if you take a low volume solid paint, you need more paints. If your loss factor is high, then you need more paints. So this is a common relationship. If you know your square meter, so generally when two people call us, we ask them what is the square meter. They will say I don't know. So then what we do is we make it for 500 square meter or something, and pro rata you can do the calculation. But sometimes as paint sellers we have a problem because we don't manufacture it here, we import it. So if you don't give us the SP as a square meter, we don't know whether we have enough paint to supply it. So sometimes it's good for you also to give the square meter or your paint requirement, so that when we are quoting, we say okay, stock 50%, stock import and supply 50%. So you need this support and cooperation between the paint supplier and the user. So this is the formula which is going for that. Then we talk about the gloss. Now you see when you go to the market, you used to have this gloss enamel paint. So you say gloss. Everybody's happy, gloss. Glicerol, shiny. So how do you categorize the gloss? So in the gloss, the industry has, as per the ISO 2813 or ASTM B523, which is a better standard, they have 5 grades for the flat, eggshell, semi-gloss, gloss, high gloss. Now this large gloss gauge or angle at 60 degrees. Flat means 0 to 15%. So it's a porta-part. There's no gloss. But in the high gloss, the angle is 80 to 100%, 20 degrees angle. So it's very shiny. So especially the primers and the intermediate coats and whatever going inside are either primers are mainly flat because you don't need gloss for the primer first coat. But the eggshell for this MIO paints, eggshell is like you get a egg to touch the egg and there's like roughness. So that is eggshell. Actually eggshell is not a visible thing, it's a touching thing. There's some problem with this large gloss gauge also because you can't see the egg. When you touch only the egg, you can feel the roughness. So the next one is semi-gloss, the gloss and the high gloss. The issue is, now when it comes to finished coats, either you have semi-gloss, gloss or high gloss. Especially if you have a bridge, railway bridge. Sometimes you don't want to have high gloss. They want to have semi-gloss. It depends, like depending on the if it is a highway, sometimes the shine can have a problem with the driver's eye. So you have to go for a gloss or a semi-gloss. So different consultants, as per their perception, they will choose this gloss. But only thing in Sri Lanka, we have not much demand for the gloss. Any paint is okay. That's not good. Especially if you have a tank coating, maybe semi-gloss. Then nobody is interested. No? You have semi-gloss because inside the water tank, nobody is going to look. No? So, but sometimes you need to have a little light shade because when you are inspecting a water tank, it has corrosion. You need to see that. So, for that purpose, you need some, not the gloss, the light shade. So, this is when you are selecting a paint, you will see the primers are flat, the intermediates are eggshell or semi-gloss, and the finished coats are semi-gloss, gloss or high gloss. But it doesn't mean, sometimes there are areas, people want eggshell as a finished coat. There are instances. So when you go to the market, now you have Dulux, Martillac, Nicolac, Sigma, and everybody. So now we have Sigma colors range, Axonobel color range, Hempel color range, Dulux color range. So these are different colors. The manufacturer is putting out for marketing purposes. But internationally, there are 3 prominent color ranges in the country-wise. One is a RAL, other one is a BS, third one is a Mansell. There are more, but these are the most common in Sri Lanka. Especially if you are getting a Japanese consultant, you will find the finished color will be a Mansell color. If you are a European contractor, you have a RAL color. Because Germany is the originator for the RAL. So if you have a British consultant, you will do the BS color code. So you just go to the internet, punch in BS colors, you see all the colors. Now, I remember there was this advertisement. There was this a lady going in a bus, and she sees a person in front of the front seat with a yellow t-shirt. Now, after some time, in the advertisement, the guy goes off. Then you see that she has cut a small piece because she liked the color, because she want to match. So this is our human beings. We like some colors, and we want to keep the color. So she cut the t-shirt. So you don't have to do that because have the color ranges, you can choose your color what you want. So if you take the RAL as a range, RAL has from 1000 to 9000 range. The 1000 range is a beige color, pastel white, yellow, orange. You go to the internet, you can find it. The RAL 2000 is orange, yellow, orange or orange. RAL 3000 is red. Now, especially in petroleum, when you are doing your fire water line, you say the fire water line should be RAL 3000. That's a flame red. So, for one guy, okay, he selected a color and said fire red. So, everybody has it. Then there's a post office red. So, we see sometimes customers are using post office red for a fire line. But that is funny. Because the guy didn't know that there was a fire color in the industry. So he went to post office. Then you have to color the post office in fire red because you have to change. No? Post office red and fire red. Almost same but little different. So you find that this all red ranges are the 3000. Then lilac, pearl, violet is 4000. Green is 6000. Sorry. Grey is 7000. Brown is 8000. And white and black and other special items are in the 9000. Now this doesn't mean you have 9000, 9001, 9002, 9003, 9004. It's not like that. It's there, but maybe at 9023 it's finishing. It is not 1000 colors. So what is happening is the RAL color you take, it was I'll come to that. So for good finishers, especially if you have Sigma green, then you have to buy Sigma green. But if you select the RAL green, now I know this Laka transformers, Angulan, when they are doing their transformers, the customers will tell you, I want RAL 7035. Because they are exporting that transformer to another country. So then they want that color. So that is also okay because he's paying for it. So from country to country when you are negotiating, it's good to go by a BS color or whatever because it's common to any country. So then other than the BS RAL and Mansa, there are proprietary colors. Those are the Martilac colors, the Dulux colors, Sigma colors. So we have our own colors. So that is also not a problem, but this Sigma is one from Sigma range. So the primer has to be matched with the color also sometimes. If you have a dark red primer, you have to put a dark color on top. If you have a light color in the underneath primer, then you can cover it good on a white color shade. So you have to select the color shade according to the primer color. Because if you use a dark one and try to put white paint, you need 3 coats. Because you can't hide it. So you need to plan it. So what we do is you have a dark red primer and intermediate you put a grey color and finish is white. Then the paint hiding factor is very good. So now in addition to these RAL colors of all the yellow, the orange, the red, the green, the blue and everything, there are 2 colors which is called the RAL 9005 and RAL 9006. Now these are very special colors. Actually these should not be in the RAL color card. But in 1970 they introduced this color into the RAL color card. Because there's an issue also, you can't touch up these paints. RAL 9005 is 9006 is a aluminum color. Aluminum pigment is not decorative color. So if you have touching up, you can't touch up. It will show off. So you have to do a deep patch. 9005 is a MIU, white is iron oxide. So what happened is in Germany World War II, the state railways or the Reichsbahn program, they selected these 2 colors for all their trains and bridges. And so you see, when you are looking at watching a film in World War II, all the railway stations and trains and everything is aluminium panel. So that is the RAL 9006. After that they start using for the Air Force and Navy also. And the thing is, they put aluminum particles. So that is why you can't call it a decorative paint. But aluminum particles will give you an anti-corrosion. So Germans are very intelligent. They put all their railway stations in aluminum, RAL 9006. So in 1970s, the RAL introduced 905 and 906 into the RAL color card. Now, we experience a lot of problems with our customers because they want 9006 or 9005, 7. Sorry, 9005 is, sorry. Yeah, 6 and 7. Now the issue is that this is not gloss. In the large scale, it is coming out of flat. So people want aluminum to be glossy. So we say, sorry, we can't give RAL 907, 6, we can't give it in this glossy. There is a bright aluminum is there. It's very shiny. But the petroleum tanks, you know, after you apply bright aluminum, within 3 days it became dull again. The glossiness won't stay. It's only while you are painting, it is good. But very soon it will get dull and with the oil, it's going to be bad. So the aluminium is good anti-corrosion wise, but no decorative properties. So what happened was recently the metallic colors are coming. So with our window frames and shop floors, now it has become a fad, like everybody wants this MIO finish or aluminum finish for the building. Because unlike white and green and blue, now if you see all buildings, they have this paneling with aluminum. Yeah, that's the trend now. So we jump from the colors and these RALs and things to the shelf life. Now shelf life, the definition is a period of manufacturer's estimate from date of manufacture during which the paint can be transported or stored in an undamaged, unopened packing at temperature of 5 to 35 degrees without any influence on the application of performance of paint. Now earlier we had not much problems. Now the Fair Trading or Consumer Product Protection Act, they are now specifying all paints like the chocolates are given with the production date. The production date is given on the tin now. So you have 2 years or sometimes thinners are 5 years. That is up to the manufacturer to specify. So now the shelf life is the, if you store it at 5 degrees, 35 degrees cool storage and under unopened packing, you have a shelf life of 2 years or 3 years or whatever. Now if you take a chocolate, now say you go to supermarket and you purchase it on the last day of the expiry. Now before the ruling came, you would have eaten that. Nothing went wrong. Now when the supermarkets, when the expiry is getting closer, they say half the price. You also buy it. Now after the expiry, if you eat, nothing happens also. Now if your guest person is dead after the expiry date, this was expired, then it's a problem. But the chocolates are, so this is not a strict rule, but paint can be used, especially now if you have something in your stores for more than 2 years. What you do is you call us and we come and test it and say, okay, we extend it to, as the manufacturer, we can extend it also. We can do some stirring and check, and we have a, when the paint is manufactured, the sample is kept in the lab. So we have some numbers, we give that number to the lab. They say, okay, still the sample is okay. If the paint is kept as per the lab conditions, it's okay. That's how they tell us. And also now our people can go and stir it and just put it on the bearer or either good. It can be applied. So you can apply. I mean, people are, it's not for consumption. No? So we don't have to worry much, but I think sometimes the food expiry date, same thing is bulldozing to the paint also. But on the other hand, if the paint is kept in a very high temperature or some humid area, some water dampness underneath, maybe after 6 months shelf life has gone. can, with the wrong storage, it can corrupt. So this is a very tricky area. Of course, I mean, as per the rule, 2 years, fine. But it can be used. Nothing can go wrong. But when you open it, if it is all like clogged and things, yes, then gone. That is true for even before the expiry. If the paint is clogged, the shelf life is gone. If the pin says 2 years, but 6 months after, there's nothing wrong. So you come first, we replace it or whatever, and we do something. Yeah, the distance got to keep you going. So solvent-based products, after exceeding the period, the paint is subject to reinspection. So after reinspection, we can say, okay, you can use it, because as far as we are telling you that paint is good, so we give the durability warranty we can give. So in the water-based products, you have to protect from freezing. If you keep it under very cold conditions, the shelf life is gone. So now we come to this ultraviolet radiation, which is the most difficult factor for our finish coats. As you are aware, the ultraviolet rays, there are 3 kinds of rays, A, B and C. The ranges are given here. Now the outer space, mesosphere, ionosphere, stratosphere, troposphere. Now troposphere is our area. Now this from the sunlight, white light comes, you have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, orange, indigo, red, violet. Now this side of red is the infrared. This side of violet is ultraviolet. Now this range is visible range. Now this is invisible range. Now when you go to the bank, they have a machine, UV light. You take a water salary, you can't see the markings. But you can see blue color underneath that. But the blue color is violet, not ultraviolet. Because you can't see the ultraviolet with the naked eye. So but when the UV rays hit the security seals, it starts glowing. So you have not 7 colors or frequencies, you have 9 frequencies. Out of that, UV has 3 sections, UVA, UVB, UC. Now the most dangerous guy is the UVB. Because they say you can get cancer if you have constant UVB. And recently I saw in the paper, in the Arctic, the UV hole has got big. The ultraviolet, sorry, the ozone layer has got that hole. Now the issue is, the ozone layer is here in the stratosphere. So when the violet comes, it goes through the indigo, the blue, the green, the yellow, the orange, the red, everything comes through. The infrared is nothing but the heat rays. Target. Infrared. So we get the warmth through the infrared. Now the paint, if you have infrared radiation for a long time, it fades. We'll explain that later. The UVB, if it starts hitting the paint, it will start fading. Now for instance, if I show you this. Now this is a red color. First color is red. Okay. How can it be red? Why do we see it as red? Can anybody explain? Why do we see this as red? Because the white light will come, hit this paper, all the other colors will absorb, and only the red will be reflected. That's the answer. So which means, if you have ultraviolet radiation on your paint, if if you have a red colored locomotive, the red color will reflect. The blue, the green, the yellow, the orange, the UV and the ultraviolet, infrared will absorb. So once you have a heat absorption, if the pigments can't withstand that, this is going to fade. Also, if the UV, if it corrupts the pigment, it's going to fade. So UV is a bad thing for our finish coat. Because you see that now this is what happened was the ozone layer is there. Then you have this chlorofluorocarbons in the refrigeration, it goes up. So you have this chlorofluorocarbon and this it will emit one chlorine here and CFCl2 will go up. And in the ozone O3 there are 3 oxygen molecules. It will catch and it will separate out the oxygen and one chlorine will take one oxygen and go. So the ozone will become oxygen. So there is a hole now. So that's why they have stopped it, the chlorofluorocarbon, they have stopped it. But the solar radiation will create ozone again. So if the ozone creation is faster than the chlorofluorocarbon damage, then you are okay. But if the ozone is getting the oxygen faster than the solar creation, then you are in trouble. So that is why this is the mechanism. So you have UVB, UVA. So what happens once the UV is absorbed? We see 4 problems in the finished coat. Now you have this epoxy red. You have glossy enamel white. So what will happen is very soon the color will fade. Your red color will become brownish color. The glossiness will get dark. The white color, if you put a white color, it will become yellowish. You would have seen this. If you are applying big tanks with white paint, very soon it is yellowish white. That is UV affected finish coat. Then there is another thing called the choking. The term choking refers to the formation of white chalky powder on the surface of the paint film. This condition often occurs in the paint weathers and bind is slowly degraded by sunshine and moisture. Actually, when you say sunshine, UV releases the binder and hold the pigment. So when you have UV light hitting the paint, what happens is when you touch the surface, you see some whitish. Thanks, sir. When you rub now in the shipping industry that won't happen because the sea will always wash it. So it's good free washing. But tanks, unless there's a rain or something, so there will be this choking. So then if you are an engineering company, if you are made build a tank after 6 months, you go for the retention, they say there is something wrong, the white patches are coming, correct me. Then the customer doesn't know what the problem is, you also don't know what the problem is, then you are in trouble. At least if you have answer like me, you can escape a little bit. So generally when people come for our to buy the products, now these things are not things to hide. You must explain, okay, this epoxy paint, the enamel paint, the acrylic paint, now say those days ships, they were all with acrylics and fluororubbers. Alkydols, enamel paints, acrylic paints. So it chokes, the color fades. The good thing is every 2-3 years the ship comes for decocking. So they are happy. But if you take a petroleum tank, it's for 10 years and nobody is going to wash the tank. So due to that, this choking, actually it is nothing to do with the anti-corrosion. No, nothing. It will not affect the anti-corrosion. On the long run, it might have a small effect, but it is the aesthetics. You have a bad finish, whitish patches, like Sri Lanka Navy, they don't want. So Navy, luckily, they wash. If the command is coming to the ship, they wash the ship. So we are okay. So So now the color fading. The color fading pigment system causes color fading. Fading is caused by when the substrate in the environment attack pigment portion of the paint cause the color change. So there is an HTM V244 under delta T calculation. You can see the color fading. There's a range like you can classify your color fading also. So the epoxy alkyd acrylic, those paints are not resisting the UV. The color will fade, the glossiness will fade, white yellowing will happen, chalking will happen. But if you want to have color retention, gloss retention, chalking resistance and yellowing resistance, you have to select a polyurethane aliphatic acrylic. Now when you go to the market, you have polyurethane varnish. Now that's a one pack paint. Then there's aliphatic acrylic and there's one more. So now those paints are one pack, those are not giving any UV protection.
There is
aromatic. Sorry. Thank you, sir. So now aliphatic acrylic polyurethanes, if you apply paint, you have a prolonged color retention, prolonged gloss retention, choking resistance. But there is a disadvantage also here. Many people don't like this paint because engineering company they are making a tank or something. Since it is very glossy, all the Adakuda will come and show. So they don't want Adakuda coming out. So they say we will put epoxy. Then it's dull or paint. So we have this little advantage. So but generally for aesthetic, you have to go for polyurethane paint, 2-pack, base and hard. Any questions up to that?
Price difference?
Price difference? 20%? Not big. But there are issues also. Because now we have to protect the paint from UV. So now as we discussed, now why do you see this as red? Because the red color will reflect. All the other colors will absorb. Now in the epoxy, the UV will absorb. The IR will absorb. So the trick is you have to reflect the UV to give the protection. Because if the UV goes in, then pigments will come off, white color. So you have to reflect the UV. So to reflect the UV, acrylic polyurethane, they put to the binder some plastic type of a hardener. So what happens, we will be discussing it later. Now you gentlemen are deciding factors, consultants. So you will say, okay, we want acrylic polyurethane because this is UV resistance. But finally the painting is done by who, sir? Painting is done by a Basu tank. That's an all Basu tank means I am not degrading the person. If I did not do my levels well, I would have also Basu tank. Because this country doesn't give that next step, no? Now maybe they are doing. So you have become Basu tank. So I don't know my English, I can't read English. So I am given the polyurethane paint, it's a 2-pack. And this hardener has plastic type of a material. So generally when you are painting, you open the thing, you take something and go and apply. Then you start writing, it is still open. You take something and open, paint it. But if you keep the hardener open for more than 50-20 minutes, it becomes plasticized. It becomes dull. So then what happens is, now we supply the base of the hardener 100 liters. Now 20 liters, out of 20 liters, now hardener is gone. So these guys will put less hardener because they now with the remaining hardener they have finished job. We are not supplying extra hardness. You will also have base hardener anyway. So then the paint is not properly because that the plastic is not going into the paint. It's not giving the choking resistance. So that is why in Dockyard we don't sell the product without a training course. People don't like us. But we as a corporate company, we want to show that we will train the Basunan. Because you all are deciding, finally, paint is painting. Now, we can't come to a forum like this and learn. So we have to educate you. Otherwise, you are going to suffer with all the knowledge. Because you are not going to paint. That guy is painting. So it's a strict rule. We have this that no training, no painting, and no selling. Because on the long run, it is good for us. Because you buy some paint from another person, and there's a failure, they come back again. So finally, we have business. But that's a bad business. Failure business is a bad business. So, any other question? Good question. Any other question? We are going to the next step. Shall I proceed? Okay.
Can you apply lacquer to?
Sorry?
Can you apply any auto lacquer to prevent?
Why?
Prevent color shade. Color shade.
Yeah. Now, if you there are UV polyurethane auto paints also. So, if you apply polyurethane auto paints, it's okay. But we are going to show you in a little while the bonding between the intermediate coat and finish coat. Now, the manufacturer will have to tell you that this can be applied. You can't decide. Compatibility. Sorry, that's the word. Compatibility. So now that you ask the question, we take that one now. Yeah. Now, if you look at this Sigma cover 280, you always go to the third page or second page. Then it will tell you this can be applied with 2-pack epoxy or polyurethane. The manufacturer has designed this primer to accept the epoxy and the polyurethane. So we have a problem. Only thing now you have an automotive polyurethane. That is all polyurethane. Only thing that's also 2-pack. So you can refer us, giving the data sheet, then we will tell you yes, you can go in. Because without knowing which product, I can't tell you this. So it's a good question. You always, without saying, can I apply Sigma Cover 280, can I apply auto paint on that? Yes, it's a democratic country, you can apply anything over it. But here that we are talking is very compatible. But when you go to the next page, you find other kinds of paints like chlorine, rubber, vinyl, alkyl paints also can be applied. Now they are mentioning it there. That is, gloss silver paint also can be applied. But we are going to the next. I will take this as the step to the next this thing. Now this is what will happen. Now now last time now this is a steel plate. Yeah, this is a steel plate. Now we are going to apply paint. Now we call this wet film thickness. Now if I put Sigma Cover 280 as a primer coat, I know the solid content is 57%. But I put at 50% just for the example. The solid content is 50%. Now this is 100 microns. It will evaporate 50%. And this becomes 50 microns DFT. So whatever it has, it goes down according to solid chlorine. Now we also learn in the morning 9 o'clock, only we start painting. So it took 4 hours. for it to come down. At 12 o'clock, the next code can be applied. Now this is what the data sheet is telling you. The minimum coding interval at 40 degrees centigrade is 4 hours, which means the WFT will become EFT within 4 hours. So that's the minimum coding interval. If you look at the epoxy is that, if you look at the other planes, the minimum interval is 2 hours for the internal planes, acrylic planes, 2 hours. Now this is the problem we are facing. Now you apply today epoxy paint over epoxy paint, so it's 4 hours. The next time you apply epoxy paint, over that you are applying inner paint. Then you only need to keep for 2 hours, but you are waiting for 2 hours. You didn't read the whole page. So sometimes you have to go through the whole page to see where you are missing. And especially now today you applied 280 and then applied inner paint. So we said 2 hours enough. So next time you buy the epoxy and apply OA. That 2 hours is not enough. Which means this now at 11 o'clock you are still here. This means this has a thinner percentage. Evaporated thinner percentage. So when you apply the paint coat on this one, where can this thinner go? This thinner will put pressure on this coat because it's called solvent treatment, and then you have a little blister going on like that. So you feel after the painting there are some blisters. So then you reject the paint work because somebody didn't wait for the 4 hours. So that's why we say O-coating interval. The data given is the data given is a fair indication of normal conditions, longer drying times necessary at low temperatures. That's what we saw. At 4 degrees steel temperature 4 hours, 30 degrees steel temperature 6 hours. So the time is corresponding to the steel temperature. Under unfavorable inclement weather ventilation condition, the time will be more. If you are inside the building and you are sweating a lot, the paint won't evaporate. So this 4 hours is for a ventilated area, and the epoxy coating's minimum curing time that we talk later. So the average DFT 50% higher, the minimum O-coating should be multiplied by 1.5. Now for instance, the chart showed for 50 microns 4 hours. But if the microns is 75%, DFT is 75%, then your O-coating is not 4 hours, 6 hours. You have to multiply by 1.5. Yeah, there is.
Animation illustrates solvent entrapment between 2 coats of paint. If the paint is not given enough time to dry between coats, blistering may occur due to solvent entrapment. This animation illustrates solvent entrapment between 2 coats of paint. If the paint is not given enough time to dry between coats, blistering may occur due to solvent entrapment. This animation.
Yeah, that's good animation. So you have this. So you need to. The data sheet will tell you 4 hours, but if you. So what you do is you put that WFT gauge what we get and estimate the EFT. And if the EFT is more than 75, you keep 6 hours. So you need to brief the painters, because they are the guys who are going to make trouble for you at the end, because you are going for inspection and if there is a failure, everybody is in trouble. So that's why we sometimes the data sheet will tell you contact the local agent. If you have some confusion, you call us, then we can tell you. So the minimum co-coating interval defined as after application, the current coating applicant will need to wait number of hours before the next application code. That's a 4 hours or 6 hours according to the steel temperature. Now we come to the next or the maximum interval. Now this is also very important thing we don't follow. So to make everybody is sleeping a little bit, I know. So just to keep it going, I'm going to act a little bit as I normally do. Now I have the paint. So you will sandblast. You apply the paint. So I have the WFT. This is 100 microns. So now 100 microns is there at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I am now 50 microns. We come down. After coming down, the top layer has active bonds. So the bonds are working like that. So as long as the bonds are working, the next coat will catch. But after some time, this bond molecules, they die off. Once they die, you can't catch it. The paint will peel off from the paint, possibly. So this is why I say, defined as a time period between the completion of minimum core coating interval and all the painted surfaces allow next coat can be accepted received from less bonding. Now for instance, the tank coatings, petroleum corporation. The minimum interval of sigma cover 280 is 6 hours. But the maximum interval is 3 months in the shade, 2 months in the sunshine. So the sun also playing game now. If you have a lot of sunshine, the bonds will die off. So if it is 3 months, this is a very good primer, because now the tank will be like this. So I go and sandblast this area. I dust off. Then I apply 100 microns of primer. It becomes 50 microns. Now after 6 hours, I can apply the next coat. But if I can't apply, because if I start applying here, what about this thing? So I have to next day go and sandblast this thing and apply the primer. Then I go to the next area, sandblast, apply next area. So all the primer coats will be done. And when you come here, it is 3 months. And this primer is ready to accept. So when you are doing a project, if your project is 3 months or 6 months, you have to look for the primer which can give you the longer maximum interval. Otherwise, there is going to be variance. So that's why I said one data sheet what we gave you, that maximum interval is empty. Because they are not sure of something. They say contact the local area. But sigma, I'm taking as example, is giving me the full assurance. As a salesman, I am very happy. Even if you pay for 3 months, paint will not debond. You are also happy because it will take a long time. So, selecting a good primer, maximizing the maximum operating time will be the best. Maximizing the maximum coating interval. Also, on the other hand, minimizing the minimum coating is also good. Because you apply today, you don't have to wait for 4 hours. Within 2 hours, you can apply the pack coat. That's also good. But especially in the tank farms, if your maximum interval is very high, it is a good selection. So this is now, by looking at this chart and these two parameters, it's a good thing. The minimum interval and the maximum interval. So this is a chart what we showed you, the sigma cover 280. Minimum is 6 to 4 hours, and the maximum, if you are in 40 degrees C temperature, 3 months. If you are in lower area, 4 months. If you are in somewhere 6 months. So So it's not temperature corresponding. So all is good to apply the very high maximum interval, then your failures will be indemnified. Now this is what it means. Now this is a steel plate and you apply a paint. When you apply paint, the paint will come off from the plate. There are so many reasons. There is oiling, there is moisturing, some other reason also. That is, if you apply paint on the galvanized steel, the paint will come off. Now, that's called the base coat detachment, where the paint is detaching from the base coat. So these words are very important. Especially when you are writing a letter, you go and see, there's a paint peel off. You check whether peel off from the base coat, then you say it's a base coat detachment. But sometimes you have intercoat detachment. That is because this paint was applied on 1st January 2015 and this paint was applied 1st April 2015. 3 months have gone. So there can be peel off like detachment. Because once the paint is detached, the important thing is, okay, it can detach. But you people, good people should know why it has detached. There should be a reason. So these are the reasons. If the paint is detaching, they should find a reason. So this is called the intercoat detachment. Now we have so many issues. Now yes, sorry.
Can you please explain this? I couldn't understand.
So again, sir.
Can you please explain this slide again? I couldn't understand.
Base coat detachment and
Okay.
intercoat.
Now, if you apply, you have a galvanized gate in your home. If you apply the paint power, sigma power 280 doesn't come. So this is not detachment. This is an addition. So the opposite of addition is detachment. So if there is oil on the surface, if there is moisture on the surface, there is stressors sometimes can detach.
Even the profile.
Yeah, sharp edges, sometimes edge coverage is not happening. So many reasons. This is there is profile. I will explain.
If you don't get the sufficient profile, recommended profile, it also leads for detachment.
Yeah. That's a very important thing I will explain.
Because it doesn't. When you apply the complete spec quantity, you can remember it, but as long as primer increments, but when you go for the subsequent coatings, it can
Now say this
eliminate
product.
Can come on.
So everything is in the product direction. I mean, people are reading. Now they say for immersion exposure, you have to steel blast clean to SA 2.5, then silicate primers, and say blasting profile should be 40 to 70 microns. Now what does it mean? You have this jacare, you sandblast it to this is RSA, should be between 40 and 70 microns. Now, if you don't have that, also can detach. That's what it means. If the profile has not been given properly, it can have a detaching effect. So now we saw some on the first day or second day you use a grinder, the mill scale didn't go. The mill scale is very smooth. That also can detach. Because when you have a smoother surface, you have a risk of detachment. Did I answer the question, sir? Okay. So, this is called the intercoat detachment and the base coat detachment. And this blistering, as we said, is due to the minimum interval not being adhered. So, slide set, what are the 4 failures, what you see especially in shipyard. One is the spot rusting, second one is the cracking of the paint, third one is the blistering of the paint, fourth one is the detachment of the paint. So there are 4 failures. This is industry standard. So now the second one is blistering. So one reason for blistering is non-adherence, non-complying the minimum interval. And one failure for interval detachment is lapsing the maximum interval. So that's why especially these days we are working with certain companies. Now, as you said, dam safety, as you said, the irrigation department, it is coming under irrigation, Mahabali, electricity board and water board. The British government gave a lot of money, sterling pounds, to resurrect the dams, all the way out tanks. So we got involved for the dam gates. So we have done this natural limited I have all the names in my head. Now, what is remaining is Tondavanaru, Rakhi the Ulmiti, and some little only, others all Sigma, other than one. So now, the Rakhi the dam is painted 10 years ago. Now the maximum interval of the dam gate has lapsed. So now if you apply some paint, it will detach. Now railway, bridges. Now there's a bridge 10 years old painted. Now you say go and apply some paint. That's what is happening today. You just go, take some bitumen paint and apply and happy. But what about the maximum interval? It has lapsed. So we have to create how to avoid peel-off. Interval detachment, how to avoid. I think Mr. Aruna will later on will discuss this as a forum also, because it is a very important thing. Now this is applied 3 months ago, and the paint is maximum interval 3 months, and this is detached. This is actually a very bad example, but this is how it works. So we, in the coming days, we will discuss about it. So then there is another one. Now, as we said, actually we are discussing the product data sheet. Now here we talked about the maximum interval and the minimum interval. Now here we call touch dry, dry handle, full cure. Actually what we are doing is, without your knowledge on the data sheet, we are trying to define the meanings of these words. So now here we have touch dry. Now touch dry means, touch dry time corresponds to tax-free time measured in accordance to the STM D1640. So you put it to touch, it's not coming to the hand. That's a very simple thing. But touch dry has a bigger meaning for the sandblasting operation. What it means is that if you sandblast here today, you have to wait minimum of 2 hours if it is 20 degrees centigrade. If you don't wait, if the dust of the next area comes and hit the paint, that paint won't come off. So if after 2 hours, if the dust gets deposited, then you can brush off. It won't go into the paint. It will get stuck there. So this touch dry is a very important thing for the last sandblasting operation. If you have a tank, if they are blasting today, okay, apply the primer. And until this primer has lapsed the 1 hour or whatever, don't anybody sandblast the next section. You go to the other side and sandblast, a little away from the wind direction. But even there, the wind is coming, then the dust will come. So you have to be careful. Because if you allow the dust to deposit within 1 hour or 45 minutes, that dust will not come off, it will get stuck. So then what happens is, you have another failure. Now you have this thing, then you have the paint, you have painted. The primary is 50 microns. Then there are dust balls all over the paint. Now these dust balls won't get off. It is stuck into the mud. So then tomorrow you don't think about it, you put next coat. Now here you have 100 microns. Now here you have 150 microns. But here you have only 50 microns. There is going to be failures there, spot rusting. Because the required DFT is not there now. There is a rope peak. We call it rope peak. Now in the sandblasting, you have peak like that, very like this. Peak like this, very like this. So you have a dust ball here. And you apply the paint. And this is only 50 microns, 50 microns, 50 microns, this is only 25 microns. So low DFT, there will be spot rusting. So you must somehow avoid dust getting into the sandblasted surface and the painted surface. The thickness will not come. So that's the meaning of touch dry. And dry to handle is, now touch dry is you apply today and 1 hour after the dust won't get into the paint. That's okay. But until this 2 hours or 1.5 hours lapse, don't carry it and put it somewhere else. Touch dry doesn't mean dry to handle. You have to have another 1 hour, 1.5 hours for you to carry it. Right there. In the full cube, you come to that. So this is the what we saw, touch dry, 45 minutes at 40 degrees centigrade and 1 hour at 30 degrees centigrade. But your dry to handle is 1.5. Then you have finger marks all over. Then you have to have rework. Then you get pain. So it's all cost. Now, full cure I will just explain and put this in another slide. Full cure is not a problem for the tank exteriors. You apply a prime coat, you wait for 3 hours, 4 hours, apply a second coat, another 3 hours, put the third coat, and you just look the other side. Because the paint will cure, they are not pouring outside. But especially petroleum, where waterboard, there are water tanks. Now water tanks, after the second coat is applied, if you don't keep 5 days, the paint is not cured. For immersion service, now say you have ship, your ballast tank, you apply the paint, and you apply and fill the water within 1 day. You have problems. You have to wait for 3 days. This particular prime now, there are other paints also. So full cure will apply for tank immersions where you are storing something. But if it is the exterior, it will take its own course and it will dry off. After curing will happen after 5 days. So as long as you are not playing with the structure, you have no problem. But especially in tanks, you need to wait for this full cure. So now the issue, the next one is, I will cover that across the pot life. Pot life is, we have a, the epoxy paint, you have a base, you have a hardener. This one has 0.8 liters. This one has 3.2 liters. So 3.2 liters plus 0.8 liters is 4 liters. So this paint will have about this much. The rest of it will be here. So when you pour it, it becomes 4 liters. There's space for the thinner. So you take a drill machine. We'll explain that. You take a no negative. So it should be very clean. So otherwise, I am opening it, those pieces will be the paint. So now you have a pneumatic stirrer. So before you start putting the hardener, I hope you can see that. Yeah, better. Sorry, make this good. No, the light, the lumens have gone. So you have to first mix because it's all scattered. Then you have to put the hardening there and keep on mixing it. Now then only the paint is ready to be applied. Now the paint is ready to be applied. But what happens is, after mixing of the base and the hardener, this all gets spoiled after hot light. So you have only 4 hours to apply. Now what happens in the painters, these people are very happy. They will mix the paint and go for a have a smoke, go to the toilet, call the girlfriend, and after 2 hours is gone. Then he said, what's paint upset? Now the hot life has lapsed. So unless you educate the painter that hot life is going to spoil your paint, he doesn't know this, no? They are just enamel painters. Many people are enamel painters. So you gentlemen should always tell, if you are using epoxy or polyurethane, go to the manufacturer or the agent, take a training course and give us a certificate. Because then you know that this guy knows something better than nothing. So this is the only way to stop this kind of it's a nuisance, you know. Like this, I don't know, so I mixed it and something wrong with it. I mean, then your money is gone anyway. So hot life is the time interval after mixing the components based on the hardener of the coating during which the material can be applied without the change of the application and performance properties of the coating. Now after mixing the base and hardener, even at 8 hours, it looks good. That's the problem. But after 4 hours or 6 hours, the formulation will change. So after that, it's not good. You can have failure. So you can put about 5% thinner, if it's not a solvent-free paint, and you finish it. So you have to have knowledge. Okay, after mixing the 4 liters, how much can I apply? So you have this formula. The solid content is 57 into 10 over 75 microns. It is 7.6 square meter per liter. So you multiply by 0.7, 30% loss factor. So you know with 1 liter, 5.72 square meters you can apply. So you take a measurement and say, okay, we have 5.72 into 4 liters. 21 square meters you can apply with this paint at a 75 microns. So you have 75 square meters, you have 5 people, you mix all together and apply, no problem. But if you have only 30 square meters, if you have only 10 square meters, and if you have only one guy to apply all 75 square meters, if you can't do it within 4 hours, then the pot life will lapse. So you need to do some calculation and say, okay, this is 30 square meters, put only this much. Otherwise, your company is going to lose money because base hardener mixing, curing, lapse, the pot life lapsing, you are throwing the paint off. I think Doctor is good for this lapsing also. Although we are talking deep here, we also do the same mistake. But it's money, no? It's money. So, also the next thing is maximum BFQ application. Now here, when you look at the data sheet, yeah.
Weather forecasting.
Yeah.
Mixing point and look at in the weather forecast ka tarantama we mix kara. Mixing point factors in the running. You have to see Idawai, the Gatunatara, can be become a Hanatila, with Chama, and get around them. Not standard of that, but take it, it doesn't around them. So, weather forecast is also one of the critical and the considerable factors.
So, trying to continue, I will just jump off this one. Now, we discussed it as last time that the paints are made out of four components: the pigments, binders, solvents, and additives. So, also we talked about the steel temperature should be less than 50 degrees centigrade. The relative humidity should be less than 85%, and the steel temperature should be 3% higher than dew point.
Degrees.
Yeah, 3 degrees centigrade. So now how? So we also learned this dry film thickness. We talked about it later. Now this is the paint thickness gauge. This is the WFD gauge. Now this is an instrument. Now this is a magnetic thermometer. So you just stick it on the ship and then it will give you the steel temperature. Now that's a shield. Especially in petroleum, you have one. Because of it. Good to have nothing. Because otherwise you can't touch and do it. You have to record. So or you can ask the contractor, you bring your temperature, but Mr. Aruna has this.
Steel temperature is an important factor of coating application and coating cure. For this reason, the steel temperature must be checked before the coating is applied and during any curing process, particularly where a hot cure is specified. Check the specification for the exact criteria on steel temperature, but as a rule of thumb, ensure the steel temperature is at least 3 degrees centigrade above the dew point. There are two general methods of assessing the steel temperature. One is to use a magnetic steel temperature gauge, and the other is to use a digital thermometer, necessary to allow 15 to 20 minutes to ensure that the temperature is stabilized. No batteries are required on the magnetic steel temperature gauge, allowing the instrument to be used in intrinsically safe locations. The magnetic temperature gauge is simply placed under the steel substrate, where it is held in place by the magnet at the back of the gauge. As the gauge has to be left to stabilize for 15 to 20 minutes, during this time the temperatures may actually rise or fall. It is therefore impractical to use this kind of gauge to take multiple readings over a large area. The electronic steel temperature gauge has the ability to give instant and accurate readings. To use the gauge, simply hold the probe onto the steel surface for a few moments and record the readings. Ensure that the probe is not dragged over the surface, as this could lead to damage and therefore inaccurate readings. Always check the gauge for damage to the probe prior to use, and ensure that the gauge is correctly calibrated if necessary. To summarize, check which type of gauge you're going to use for assessing the steel temperature. The magnetic type of gauge is simply positioned on the steel surface and left for 15 to 20 minutes to stabilize. The electronic or digital steel temperature gauge is switched on, visually inspected, and placed on the steel surface. The steel temperature should be recorded whichever gauge is used.
So this is the steel temperature. We have the RH. And the RH is this.
Relative humidity is simply defined as the amount of moisture in the air compared to the maximum amount possible. The amount possible is expressed as a percentage from 1 to 100%.
Fill this with water.
There are various instruments available for assessing the relative humidity, including the illustrated electronic gauge.
In that one,
we give you relative humidity at a flick of a switch.
This one we have to manually do it now.
Calibration can be expensive. By far the most popular instrument used in the protective coatings industry is the whirling hygrometer. Here we can see a whirling hygrometer and its essential components. Both manual and automatic hygrometers are available. The assessment for relative humidity at dew point is usually conducted by the supervisor or quality control personnel. The process is quite simple and can usually be performed by trained coating applicators. Ensure you check the whirling hygrometer before it is used for wear, tear or damage. Also check that the bulbs are not broken, the wick is clean, and the The instrument has distilled water in the holder. Whirl the hygrometer for approximately 30 seconds, keeping it away from your body. Check the temperatures on the wet bulb and then the dry bulb and record the readings. You should conduct 2 or 3 readings to ensure that you get consistent recordings. Once you have the wet and dry bulb temperatures, you can find the relative humidity by using tables or a relative humidity calculator, which will also give you the dew point.
Is it
To
dry bulb?
recap, establish the relative humidity criteria laid down in the specification or product data sheets. Check the whirling hygrometer for wear, tear and damage, and check that the bulbs are not broken. Also, check the instrument has distilled water, that the wick is attached and clean. Whirl the hygrometer away from your body. Record the readings on both the wet and the dry bulbs.
Yeah, you can't
Finally,
manipulate.
using tables or a calculator, assess the relative
Okay, no,
humidity
but-
against the criteria set in the paint specification or product data sheets.
But you have to put water first. Into that tank, you have to put water first. Now, this one, this is the water tank. Sorry. Now, this is the water tank. So, this is a flint. These are the flints. So, you put the water into the wet part. And so, when you turn, you have, say, for instance, 20 degrees for the dry bulb, 25 degrees for the wet bulb. Make the readings. Then you go to the chart and you read it. The difference is 3 degrees. The dry bulb is 26 degrees. So your relative humidity is 78% and dew point is 22. But in the digital one, you can straight away get all the information without doing this. So, because I know Saruna who joined Nokia in 85, there are so many instances that you go and fix the thermometer into the ship hull and you forget it, it's gone to other country. So the magnetic temperature gauge is in volumes. Then the next ship comes, you search for it, finds out there. So this will happen, So but with this digital one, that won't happen because you have to carry the hand. So here we have 3 degrees we have 3 degrees of difference because your dry bulb was 28 degrees, the wet bulb was 26 degrees, and wet bulb was say 23 degrees. So difference is 3. So this is your matrix, and that's your reading. So since the maximum RH is 85%, the first parameter is okay. As long as you have relative humidity below 85 degrees, you can make. And your difference between when you keep that thermometer onto the steel, you get the steel temperature. The steel temperature, say it's about 35 degrees centigrade, and your dew point is 22. So 35 is more than 3 degrees higher than the dew point, you can paint. And the steel temperature is less than 50 degrees centigrade, you can paint. So all 3 parameters have been covered, so you can paint. Steel temperature 50 degrees, relativity 85, less than that, and the dew point. So when you are doing a big project, you will have a QC department with this stuff. It will not only reduce the failures, until you know where it failed also, and you keep on monitoring. This is actually, when you say painting, you take a paint brush, you take a paint, you apply paint. That's a painting. But this is a different chemistry here. So, sorry.
After the time.
Everything.
Straight.
හොඳයි. යකඩ ගත්තම බැලුවොත් තමයි බැලුව ආරච්චි එක ඔයාලට view point එක check කරලා paint කරන්න. Then second code do the same thing. All because it should be for all codes. So if you can see some rain clouds coming, your RH is still 80. Depending on the wind, because once you fix the base and the hardener, you have 4 hours. But if the rain is coming in 2 hours, this you have to throw it. You have to throw the paint. So that's why actually I jumped into the parameters because I was trying to explain the paint fixing. But so paint fixing has to be done with this in mind. These are parameters. This is industry standards. And also this we did in chemistry also in a different way. Only thing as we said in our education system and the industry is not clicking, they are in two separate places. We know something is like that, but we don't use it. No? So these are the parameters. So moving on. So yeah, now this is what this means. Now here, this data sheet, Sipakawa do it. I'm taking an example. It is written there. Recommended dry film is 1500 microns. So there's a meaning for that. Now, if the dry film is 100, the wet film is about 157 approximately. You should not apply more than 156 degrees, that is microns. If you apply 160, one thing it will drip off because this has no withstanding power over that limit. Now there are certain paints like the tank coatings, 78% solids or 100% solids. Now those can be applied 150 to 200 microns in one. So always have a look at your data sheet and make a gauge. Okay, this can't go more than 100 degrees centigrade, it will drip. Sagging, no?
RTCN 300.
RTCN 300.
That can go up to 500 microns.
Yeah.
100 wet 500.
So it says that if this paint can now, the primer is on this slide, can be applied only 100 micron maximum. But on the other slide, a different paint, different solid content 71%, which can go up to a higher thickness. So you need to have this connection because finally we are doing the designing of the paint system, coating system. That's our final goal.
That's called second.
Second, start.
Second.
Anything but second?
Slide on second.
I will bring it. I have one of these computer power. Yeah, second is you can you go second? There's a book. No, it doesn't say on the data sheet. It only says the paint is meant for 100 microns. So it means don't apply more than that.
Some specifications mentioned. No setting. Specification.
You mean the product data sheet or your
Consultants
Yeah, that's true, sir. When the consultant says no sagging, which means you have to use the correct primer which doesn't sag. So you are right 100%. What it means is that the paint is not the deciding factor. You are the deciding factor. You will decide, okay, the consultant said no sagging, so let me, how much thickness you want? 200 micron. To sigma comma 280 out. Because it will sag. So you have to keep on turning pages and try to find out which one will not sag at the corresponding yield. So that's why we say here primer 1.5 times specified DFT, not to exceed 1.5. When the paint manufacturers do their formulations, when they say 100 microns, you still can go a little higher. Because normally when you have a car running for 220 kilometers per hour, you put the meter only 180. That's how you do it. Otherwise you go at a high speed. So likewise, when you say 100, even 110, 20, it will not make a difference. But they don't show you on the paper. Because if you put 150, you go 200. So actually this is not manufacturer's opinion, in my opinion. I mean, this is what it says. But in the critical areas, that is the real stage of other side. Can you read that, Mr.? I'll read. This effects are the downward movements of core of the paint which appears soon after application and before setting that results in an uneven area with thick lower edge. They are usually apparent on local areas and vertical surface. In severe situations may be described as curves. So that is called curves when you have a severe situation. The possible causes: one, application of the paint, excessive of the use of thinners if you use excessively, incorrect curing agent. Sometimes you take the sigma cover 280 and put some other sigma cover into that one. You mix up the hard, wrong hard, or poor workmanship. Could in extreme circumstances be a formulation problem. Sometimes the paint, defect in the paint, also possible. Prevention is use correct application techniques and suitable formulator. So repair is also given in that. At edges, bolts, corners, nuts areas, you may go for 2 times of the beam. Because what happens is actually they are not telling the truth. What happens is why they say here, now you apply paint. You apply paint. Normally at this edge, there is an edge coverage problem. So that's why they are saying go for 2 times to prevent a failure there.
So, 2 applications of 1 shot.
Again, sir?
2 applications of 1 time, double the rate. 2 times.
Yeah, it will be crossroads generally.
But you shouldn't exceed the recommended dry film thickness.
No, on the edges.
On the edges.
Edges also.
Edges they are not getting to something.
Okay. But
But if you like 2 coats,
as long as it doesn't get,
yeah. One
as
after
long as
the
it bears vertically.
Yeah.
Vertically, yeah. As long as it can stay vertically, then it is okay.
So, coming back to the data sheet, you all have all the data sheet, you can read it. But what happens is, for the applicator, sometimes you don't give the papers. You have in the file, you have a folder, but the paint applicator doesn't get the chance to read it. And his English is also not very good. Understanding is a problem. And sometimes he's lazy also. And sometimes taken for granted. It means, Sigma, no, I have tried before. I know how to do it. But this time you get a different paint. So different paint means different innovator, different maximeter, different specified DFT, etc. And sometimes the applicator doesn't understand the importance also. Because one time I just kept it at home. I gave it to the son to read. So those are the problems we are facing. But the issue is, all these bad disadvantages, we can't play the fool with the systems, the bridge. The bridge has to be done properly. Your applicator's ignorance and or the laziness is not a. So that's why when people come to our office, we put this paper and teach them the data sheet. I just quickly go through Sigma 280, Case and Martin. It's a 5-page product. It's a 2-component polymer epoxy primer. And Sigma cover, name is there, Anke is there, epoxy is there, primer is there, and this is a molecular action. And galvanized steel, it bonds written there. So when they are applying, they have galvanized steel and yakata. So for yakata, we say put any primer. And we give SCR 280 primer for the galvanized areas. So he has to tell Malik, they had to make garment. Otherwise, he will put all over. First coat, this is another issue there. So you have to educate and tell him very clearly this is the issue. And the color is green yellow. Solid volume Ganadra is 57. Density is this. Anumata Velipatlagana is this. And the Nyayaka Tita Katruma is this. So we have to tell it in singles or Tamil. Otherwise, that guy can understand. No? We do big classes, we have gone through all PhDs, and the painter is, making us all trouble. And this is immersion areas, the atmospheric exposure, the so that the base hardness ratio is 8:20. So you have to mark it very clearly. And the thinner should be 9192, don't use any other thinner. And there is a thing called in the air spray. There is a thing called the nozzle orifice. This is a air spray gun. Now when you look at this is a tip for the 517. Now there is a tip number. So you buy the paint, you give to the paint applicator, and you say he'll do a good job. Now the fellow doesn't have the correct tip. If that guy doesn't have the correct tip, you are going to suffer. Because you don't know the meaning of that tip. So this nozzle orifice is a very important meaning, because its nozzle orifice is that little hole is in this particular Sigma cover 280 is 0.46 millimeter, that is half a millimeter. But as we said in America, they don't use the metric, they use only imperial. They drink gallons, they go miles, not kilometers. So for the benefit of the American applicator, they put this 0.18 of an inch, that is 1000 inch divided and 18 is your killer. So that is very important. Then you can use roller brushes. You have to wear safety. You have training. If the paint goes to the eye, you are in trouble. Then when you look at this also, it's nice. Now the data sheet is what we saw. Now there is a thing called a safety data sheet. MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet. Now nobody is asking for this paper from us. Because they don't know the meaning of this. Now this material data sheet gives you information. This is a PPT coating Belgium, and this is a very long paper, and it tells you the physical chemical hazards, the danger signals, label elements. All this safety data is on this one. You also don't give it, somebody asks you give, because when you give also some problem for us also to teach. The issue is, now if what are the problems? Causes digestive tract burst, prolonged repeated contact may cause skin irritations. So all the health hazards are given in this. But now this is very important. This particular Sigma cover 280 has methyl-propane 1-OL, xylene, fatty acids, 2.246 TRIS, diethylene amino ethyl phenol. Now if the paint is going into the eye of an applicator by mistake, This paper says only fresh water washing. Nothing, no, you don't put this anything else other than water. You have to wash it the water. And when he has to go to the doctor, especially if you have pain in the eye or skin, some problem, you take this paper, because there's one for the base, one for the heart. So you have to keep it in the safety and you have to take it to the doctor. So otherwise, doctor doesn't understand anything what is in the eye room. He doesn't understand sigma cow He will understand methyl propane. So MSDS should be all filed and kept for immediate emergency situation. When you are going to the doctor, you have to take the correct, you don't take the wrong one also. Because from pain to pain, this differs. So there should be some responsible person who knows this MSDS. Take the 280 and give it to the doctor. Then he will give the correct treatment. Because somebody dies now. You have to be very careful of this eyes. Maybe he will use the goggles. But once the pain goes into the eye, we are responsible. I mean, our company is responsible. That's the funny side from the labor department. So this will also say wear protective gloves, wear eye face protection, people from heat, blah blah. Everything is written here. So the product data sheet is something else. Material safety data sheet is something else, which is you can log into internet and just punch in. You can get. I just look at this internet. I just punch in. So very important that this safety should be more. Of course, this is all the diagrams are put into this paintbrush, but the data sheet doesn't have these pictures. So, and this is the low Ushnate, Aga Ushnate. Because many people think this is atmospheric temperature. This is not atmospheric temperature, this is the substrate temperature. Maybe the atmospheric temperature is 25 degrees. The steam temperature is 45 degrees. So you have to take at 45 degrees, not at 25 degrees. So then minimum interval, maximum interval. So we have to teach these painters. This is very important because otherwise he is going to exceed the 2 months. Then base hardener. Now there is one issue here. Now our product actually says 35 degrees 4 hours. But sometimes you are applying, you are mixing at 45 degrees centigrade. Then the bottom line is 1 hour less, where this corresponds to the temperature. So it's important that you give a reduced time to the band. Now although the data sheet says 4 hours, don't say 4 hours. Say 1.5 hours. It's always good to have a margin. So you have a base, you have a hardener like this, base and a hardener. And always we say clean the top lip. We showed you that video. Top lip will have a lot of UV contaminations. So when you are opening it, those things will go in and your all air spray machines will go for things. So it's important that and also when we are opening, even if you are opening, you have to ensure that you open it in such a way that you can close it also. If you half use it, then you get spoiled. And you take measurements and say, okay, how many square meters you have you are going to apply today. As we said, this one you can do about 200 square feet. Now you have only 50 square feet. That means you have to take only 1 meter. So that is a measurement you have to understand. So always encourage your people to value safety and read the data sheet. What is the DFT you have to get? What is the WFT? DFT 50. Tell the man that plastic should have 100 microns, then you get 50 microns. Then square meter per get this loss factor idea. If you are applying outside, go for a 40%.